Part 1. The sky over Varelli's prime shimmered with colors no human eye had ever seen before. Purple clouds drifted slowly across a horizon lit by twin suns, casting long shadows over the marble towers of the Imperial Citadel. Below, on a wide platform of polished obsidian, stood Daniel Cole. He wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, its only decoration a small silver pin shaped like a globe. His hands were bound not with rope or metal, but with glowing energy cuffs that hummed softly with every breath he took. Around him, thousands of aliens watched in silence. Varelians with their tall, slender frames and silver eyes, Krellians with armored hides, and dozens of other species whose names Daniel had learned during his 2 years on this world. None of them spoke. None of them moved. They only watched as the sentence was read. Daniel had come to Varelli's prime not as a soldier, but as a bridge. Earth had spent decades reaching out to the stars, sending signals, probes, and finally ships, all in hopes of peaceful contact. When the Galactic Empire, a vast alliance of hundreds of worlds ruled from this very city, finally acknowledged humanity, Daniel was chosen to represent his species. He was calm, thoughtful, and fluent in 3 alien dialects. He had built trust slowly, one meeting at a time until trade routes opened and cultural exchanges began. For the first time in history, humans walked among aliens not as curiosities but as equals, or so it seemed. The trouble began 3 weeks earlier. The Imperial Chancellor, a Varelian elder named Zorath Veln, had been poisoned during a state banquet. Security footage showed a human-shaped figure slipping a vial into the Chancellor's drink. Though the figure's face was blurred, the uniform matched Earth's diplomatic attire. Within hours, Daniel was arrested. He protested his innocence, but the Empire's justice system moved fast. There was no jury, no cross-examination, no chance to call witnesses. The High Tribunal declared him guilty based on pattern recognition and species probability. Human fingerprints were found on the vial. Human DNA traces were detected in the residue. To the Varelians, that was enough. Back on Earth, people watched the trial unfold on every screen, phones, walls, public plazas. At first, there was disbelief, then anger, then silence. Daniel's sister, Lisa Cole, stood outside the United Earth Embassy in New York, holding a photo of her brother as a boy, smiling beside a lake in Colorado. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just stood there, and thousands joined her in quiet solidarity. Governments across the planet demanded answers, but the Empire refused all appeals. Justice must be swift, their broadcast declared, to preserve galactic order. On the morning of the execution, Daniel was given one final chance to speak. He stood tall despite the cuffs, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd and the countless viewers across the stars. "I did not poison your Chancellor," he said. "But even if you believe I did, killing me will not bring him back. It will only feed fear, and fear builds walls, not peace." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some Varelians looked away. Others clenched their fists. The Grand Executor, a scarred warlord named Krell Voss, stepped forward. He did not respond to Daniel's words. Instead, he raised a slender rod tipped with blue crystal. The crowd parted. The air grew cold. The method of execution was ancient, reserved only for traitors and enemies of the state. The rod emitted a pulse that unraveled molecular bonds. It did not burn or cut. It simply made the body cease to exist piece by piece from the inside out. Daniel closed his eyes. He thought of Earth, of rain on rooftops, of his mother's laugh, of the smell of pine trees in winter. Then the pulse struck. It began at his feet. His boots vanished first, then his legs, dissolving into shimmering dust that floated upward like ash in a breeze. He did not scream. He stood as still as a statue until his chest began to fade. Then his shoulders, then his face. In less than 10 seconds, Daniel Cole was gone. Only his silver globe pin remained, clattering softly onto the obsidian platform before rolling to a stop at the executor's feet. The broadcast cut to black. On Earth, millions stared at blank screens. In government bunkers, military officers exchanged grim looks. In homes, parents held their children tighter. The silence lasted for exactly 3 minutes. Then, across every continent, alarms began to sound. Not emergency sirens, but the deep, resonant chime of the United Earth Defense Network activating for the first time in peacetime. President Elena Ruiz appeared on every channel within the hour. Her eyes were red, but her voice was iron. They took one of ours, she said. They called it justice. We call it murder. Earth will not forget. Earth will not forgive. In orbit, hidden among the debris fields of old satellites, automated shipyards stirred to life. Deep beneath the oceans, dormant reactors powered up. In labs from Tokyo to Buenos Aires, scientists opened sealed files marked Project Retribution. No one celebrated. No one cheered. But a quiet, cold determination spread through every human settlement, from Mars colonies to lunar bases. They had tried peace. They had offered friendship. They had sent their best to stand among strangers and speak with open hands. And in return, they had been shown what the Empire truly thought of them. Expendable, guilty by birth, unworthy of fairness. Daniel's death was not just the loss of a diplomat. It was the death of an idea, the idea that humanity could be welcomed into the galaxy as equals. Now that idea was buried with him, and from its ashes rose something else, resolve. Hard, sharp, and unyielding. The Empire had expected fear. They had expected submission. What they got was something far more dangerous, a species that had nothing left to lose. As the twin suns set over Varelli's prime, the silver pin was picked up by a young Varelian aide and placed in a sealed evidence box. Unseen by anyone, a tiny crack had formed along its edge. Back on Earth, in a quiet workshop in Seattle, Marcus Bell stared at a hologram of that same pin, rotating slowly in the air. He had known Daniel. They had trained together. Now Marcus wiped his eyes, turned off the display, and walked to his workbench. On it lay the first prototype of a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. He picked up a wrench. The war had not been declared yet, but it had already begun. Part 2. The days after Daniel Cole's execution passed in a blur of grief and quiet fury. On Earth, flags flew at half-mast, not just in government squares but on rooftops, balconies, and even makeshift poles in refugee camps on Mars. People did not riot. They did not scream. They worked. Factories that once built solar harvesters now hummed with the sound of armor plating. Schools paused lessons to teach emergency drills. In the halls of the United Earth Command, President Elena Ruiz met with her top advisors behind sealed doors. She did not speak of revenge. She spoke of survival. If they think we are weak, she said, they will keep taking. We must show them we are not prey. Among those called to action was Marcus Bell. He was only 29, with messy brown hair and hands that always smelled of oil and ozone. He had grown up in a small town near Denver, fixing drones and dreaming of stars. When Earth opened its first interstellar academy, Marcus was among the first to enroll. He never wanted to fight. He wanted to build, to connect. But when he saw Daniel dissolve on that platform, something inside him hardened. Now he stood in a hidden orbital lab above the Pacific, staring at a sphere of swirling blue energy suspended between magnetic rings. This was the heart of Project Retribution, the graviton disruptor. It did not fire bullets or lasers. It bent gravity itself, crushing ships from the inside out without leaving a single scar on their hulls. Silent, invisible, final. Marcus worked day and night. He slept on a cot in the corner, ate protein bars that tasted like chalk and spoke only when necessary. His team respected him not because he shouted, but because he never stopped. One evening, as he adjusted the resonance frequency for the 10th time, a voice came from the doorway. You're going to burn out before the first shot is fired. It was Leah Foster. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed, her dark eyes sharp beneath a short crop of black hair. Leah was Earth's best signals intelligence officer. While Marcus built weapons, she hunted secrets. She had spent the last 3 weeks buried in stolen Varelian data streams, chasing ghosts through firewalls older than human civilization. She walked in and handed him a data chip. I found it, she said simply. Marcus plugged it in. A hologram flickered to life, a security log from the night of the Chancellor's poisoning. It showed the real assassin, not a human but a Varelian wearing a mimic suit that copied human shape and uniform. The footage had been erased from official records, but Leah had recovered it from a backup server on a mining moon. Worse, the order had come from General Krell Voss himself, the same man who executed Daniel. The poisoning was never about justice. It was a power play. Voss wanted to crush Earth before it grew too strong, and he used the Chancellor's death as an excuse. Marcus stared at the image of the fake human walking through the banquet hall. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with rage. They lied, he whispered. Leah nodded. And they think we'll never know. But now Earth knew. And knowledge was a weapon, too. Down on the surface, Captain Owen Pierce prepared his fleet. He was a lean man with a quiet voice and eyes that missed nothing. He had flown reconnaissance missions along the outer rim for 10 years, mapping asteroid fields and alien patrol routes. Now he stood on the bridge of the ES Vanguard, Earth's newest stealth frigate. Its hull absorbed radar, its engines ran near silent, and its weapons could strike without warning. Owen ran drills with his crew every day, evasive maneuvers, sensor spoofing, rapid deployment. He didn't speak much about Daniel, but his crew knew. They saw it in the way he checked every system twice, in the way he stayed on the bridge long after his shift ended. He was ready. They all were. Back in orbit, Marcus made a breakthrough. The graviton disruptor could now be mounted on orbital defense platforms, massive stations that once guarded Earth from asteroids. With a few modifications, they could target ships light minutes away. The range was limited, but enough to protect the Sol system. President Ruiz approved immediate deployment. Within a week, 6 platforms powered up, their cores glowing like captured stars. No one announced it. No broadcasts. Earth simply became a fortress no one saw coming. Leah dug deeper. She discovered that Voss had allies across the Empire, generals, admirals, even senators, who feared human innovation. They believed that if Earth was allowed to grow, it would one day challenge Varelian rule. So they pushed for isolation, then hostility, then war. But not all Varelians agreed. Leah found whispers of dissent, scientists, artists, even some military officers who thought the execution was a mistake. One name kept appearing, Nara Vex, a bioengineer who had publicly criticized the tribunal. Leah sent a coded message through a neutral trade channel. Days later, a reply came, short, cautious, but clear. I know the truth. I can help. Meanwhile, tension grew. Varelian scout ships began appearing near the edge of human space. At first, they stayed far out, just watching. Then they moved closer. One crossed into the Oort cloud without warning. Earth's early warning satellites tracked it. Owen's fleet shadowed it for 3 days before it turned back. But the message was clear, the Empire was testing them. Seeing if Earth would flinch, it did not. President Ruiz held a closed session with the Global Defense Council. We will not fire first, she said. But if they cross our line, we will not warn them twice. The line was the orbit of Neptune. Any Varelian ship beyond that point would be considered hostile. Marcus finished the final calibration on Platform Theta. He stood in the observation deck, looking down at Earth, blue, fragile, beautiful. He thought of Daniel, of his sister Lisa holding that photo, of the millions who now looked to their leaders for protection. He wasn't just building a weapon, he was building a shield. And if it came to it, a sword. Leah received another message from Nara Vex. This one contained coordinates and a time. A meeting place on a neutral station near the Helios Rift. Risky, but necessary. Leah packed a small bag, checked her sidearm, and boarded a courier ship under false identity. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. Owen gathered his captains. They stood in the Vanguard's war room, star charts glowing on the table. They think we're scared, he said. Let them keep thinking that until it's too late. His crew nodded. They understood. Fear was useful. Let the Empire believe Earth would beg for peace. Let them sail in with arrogance. They would not expect what waited in the dark. High above, Marcus activated the disruptor for the first live test. A derelict freighter filled with sensors drifted into position. He pressed a single button. The freighter did not explode. It simply folded inward, collapsing into a dense, silent sphere before vanishing into a micro-singularity that winked out a second later. No debris, no signal. Just gone, Marcus exhaled. It worked. On Earth, children played in parks. Farmers harvested crops. Artists painted. Life went on. But beneath the surface, humanity had changed. It was no longer reaching out with open hands. It was standing firm, eyes wide open, ready to defend what was theirs. The Empire had lit a fire they could not control, and soon they would feel its heat. Part 3. The Varelian blockade began without warning. One morning, Earth's deep space sensors picked up a ripple in the void beyond Neptune, then another, and another. Within hours, 12 massive warships dropped out of warp, their hulls dark as obsidian, their weapons arrays glowing faintly red. They took position in a perfect ring around the outer edge of the Sol system and broadcast a single message on all frequencies. By order of the Imperial High Command, all human vessels are forbidden to leave or enter Sol space. Violators will be destroyed. No explanation. No negotiation. Just command. On Earth, alarms did not blare. There was no panic in the streets. People had expected this. They had prepared. In the United Earth Command bunker beneath Geneva, President Elena Ruiz watched the feed from the orbital platforms. Her face was calm, but her fingers tapped once on the arm of her chair, a small sign that she had made her choice. She gave the order. Activate Protocol Iron Shield. High above, Marcus Bell stood at the control console of Platform Theta. His hands moved fast, entering final targeting codes. Around him, other platforms powered up in silent unison. The Varelian ships were still broadcasting their demands, unaware that Earth's defenses were already awake. Marcus took a breath. Fire, he said. The first shot came from Platform Gamma near the orbit of Mars. A pulse of distorted gravity lanced out, invisible to the eye. It struck the lead Varelian dreadnought square in the engine core. The ship did not explode. It crumpled like paper crushed in a fist, then imploded into nothing. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only a ripple in space. The other ships scrambled, shields flaring, weapons charging. But they were too slow. Platform Theta fired next. Then Epsilon. Then Zeta. Each shot precise, each target chosen with care. Within 90 seconds, 8 of the 12 blockade ships had vanished. The remaining 4 broke formation, trying to jump to warp. But Owen Pierce was waiting. Hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings, the EAS Vanguard and 3 sister frigates powered up their drives. Owen gave a single command. Strike. The human ships shot forward, silent and fast. Their railguns fired tungsten slugs at near light speed, punching through weakened shields. Their missiles carried micro-warheads that detonated inside enemy hulls, frying circuits and life support. One Varelian cruiser tried to flee. Owen's ship cut it off, disabling its warp coil with a single well-placed shot. The cruiser drifted, dark and dead. The last 2 ships managed to escape, vanishing into warp with damaged engines. But the message had been sent. Earth was not defenseless. Earth was not afraid. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread faster than light. Alien traders, neutral diplomats, and rebel spies all carried the same story. Humans had struck back and won. On a dozen worlds, oppressed species whispered the name Earth like a prayer. On Vareli's Prime, the High Command erupted in chaos. General Krell Voss demanded immediate retaliation. They dare attack Imperial vessels? He roared in the war chamber. We will burn their world to ash. But others hesitated. The ease with which Earth had dismantled the blockade unsettled them. Their intelligence had said humans were primitive, unprepared. Clearly, they had been wrong. Back in Sol space, cleanup began. Tugs retrieved debris. Engineers analyzed sensor logs. Marcus reviewed the disruptor performance. It had worked better than expected. The only flaw? It needed 30 seconds to recharge between shots. He made a note. Reduce cooldown time. Every second mattered now. Leah Foster returned from her mission near the Helios Rift. She met President Ruiz in a secure room beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Her face was tired, but her eyes were bright. Nara Vex is real, she said. And she's not alone. There's a whole network inside the Empire. Scientists, pilots, even low-rank officers who hate what Voss has done. They call themselves the Dawn Circle. She handed over a data crystal. This contains schematics of the new Varelian dreadnoughts, their patrol routes, and a list of supply depots. Most valuable of all was the location of the Empire's main communications hub, a massive relay station orbiting the gas giant Kethra. If that fell, the Empire's command structure would fracture. Owen studied the intel. We can hit it, he said. But we'll need to get close. And fast. Marcus had an idea. What if they used the graviton disruptor not just as a weapon, but as a shield? By pulsing it in a wide arc, they could create a temporary gravity well, a trap that would yank enemy ships out of warp right where they wanted them. It was risky, unproven, but worth trying. 3 days later, the plan was set. Operation Silent Hammer. Owen would lead a strike force of 4 frigates toward Kethra. Marcus would control the disruptor pulse from Platform Theta. Time to the second. Leah would jam enemy signals the moment they dropped out of warp. Everything had to happen in perfect sync. The fleet launched at dawn Earth time. No fanfare, no speeches. Just ships slipping quietly into the void. For 2 days, they traveled through uncharted space, using asteroid belts and solar flares to mask their heat signatures. On the 3rd day, they reached the edge of Kethra's system. The relay station loomed ahead, a spinning ring of metal and crystal guarded by 6 destroyers and a command cruiser. Owen gave the signal. Marcus triggered the disruptor. Far away in soul space, a pulse of warped gravity shot across light years, arriving exactly as planned. The Varelian ships mid-patrol suddenly found themselves yanked from warp without warning. Alarms blared across their bridges. Before they could react, Owen's frigates opened fire. Railgun rounds shredded the destroyer's shields. Missiles slipped through gaps, exploding in engine rooms and command decks. The relay station tried to send a distress call, but Leah's jamming signal drowned it out. Within minutes, the station's core was breached. Owen's team planted charges on its main data core, then pulled back. The explosion was silent in the vacuum, but brilliant. A flash of white light swallowed the station, then faded into drifting wreckage. The Empire's outer communications grid went dark. On Vareli's Prime, confusion reigned. Reports came in fragmented, delayed, or not at all. Generals shouted over broken links. Fleets lost coordination. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was blind at its edges. On Earth, no one celebrated. They knew this was only the beginning. But for the first time since Daniel's death, hope flickered. They had not just defended themselves, they had struck a blow that echoed across the stars. And somewhere in the dark, other voices were beginning to answer. Part for Arrear. The silence after the Kethra strike lasted only a few days. Then the Empire moved, not with scattered patrols, but with a full armada, over 200 warships, led by General Krell Voss himself aboard the flagship Iron Maw. They gathered at the edge of human space, engines idling like a storm waiting to break. Their goal was clear: crush Earth before it could strike again. Voss broadcast a final warning: surrender your leaders and dismantle your weapons, or your world will be glassed from orbit. Earth did not reply. It did not need to. President Elena Ruiz knew the Armada was coming. Leah's network had sent word through coded bursts hidden in civilian trade signals. Nara Vex, now working openly with the Dawn Circle, had leaked the fleet's exact route and formation. The rebels inside the Empire were no longer just whispering, they were acting. Saboteurs disabled fuel depots. Pilots filed false maintenance reports. Engineers rerouted power to non-essential systems, slowing repairs. The Empire's mighty machine was rusting from within. Owen Pierce studied the star map in the Vanguard's war room. The Varelian Armada would pass through the Helios Rift, a narrow corridor of warped space where navigation was difficult and sensors unreliable. It was the perfect place for an ambush, but Earth didn't have enough ships to win a head-on fight. They needed something smarter. Marcus had an idea. What if they didn't fight the whole fleet? What if they split it? Using the graviton disruptor, they could create a series of small controlled gravity pulses along the rift. Each pulse would yank ships out of formation, scattering them like leaves in a storm. Once divided, Owen's frigates could pick them off one by one. It was dangerous. If the timing was off by even a second, the pulses could tear human ships apart too. But it was their best chance. The plan came together in secret. Marcus recalibrated all 6 orbital platforms to fire in sequence, their pulses timed to arrive at the rift in a precise wave pattern. Leah coordinated with rebel cells inside the Empire to jam Varelian comms the moment the fleet entered the zone. Owen trained his crews on hit-and-run tactics: strike fast, vanish faster. They practiced in simulators until their hands moved without thinking. On the day of the battle, the sky above Earth was clear. Children played in parks. Farmers worked their fields. No one knew that light minutes away, the fate of their world hung in the balance. Owen's fleet, now 8 frigates strong, hid in the asteroid belt near the rift. They powered down everything except life support and weapons. They waited. The Varelian Armada arrived at dawn Earth time. Their ships moved in perfect formation, shields up, weapons charged. Arrogance rolled off them like heat. They expected fear. They found silence. Then the first pulse hit. It came from nowhere, a ripple in space that tugged at the lead ships like an invisible hand. The formation buckled. Ships veered off course, colliding with each other. Alarms blared across Varelian bridges. Before they could recover, the second pulse struck, then the third. The armada shattered into 3 broken groups, drifting in confusion. Owen gave the order. Now! The human frigates shot out from the asteroid, silent and fast. Railgun slugs tore through weakened shields. Missiles slipped into engine vents and exploded. One Varelian destroyer tried to fire back, but its targeting systems glitched, thanks to Leah's remote hack, and it hit its own cruiser instead. Chaos spread. Marcus watched from Platform Theta, sweat on his brow. He fired the next pulse just as a Varelian battleship locked onto the Vanguard. The gravity wave bent space around the enemy ship, throwing its shot off course. Owen's ship dodged, then returned fire, crippling the battleship's core. But the real surprise came from within the Empire itself. As the battle raged, rebel ships, small, unmarked but armed, rose from hidden bays inside captured supply freighters. They flew the Dawn Circle's symbol, a silver sun breaking through dark clouds. Led by Nara Vex in a stolen scout vessel, they targeted command ships, cutting off orders and spreading false retreat signals. Varelian captains, already disoriented, began to doubt. Some turned back. Others fired on their own allies by mistake. General Voss aboard the Iron Maw screamed for control, but his comms were jammed, his fleet in pieces. He ordered a full retreat, but it was too late. Owen's frigates surrounded the flagship. Marcus fired the final pulse, not to destroy but to trap. The Iron Maw's warp drive overloaded, stranding it in place. Boarding teams from the Vanguard stormed the flagship. They found Voss in the command chamber, surrounded by dead guards, his face twisted in rage. He refused to surrender. Owen didn't argue. He stunned him with a pulse rifle and dragged him out. The warlord who had ordered Daniel's death was now a prisoner of the very species he had called weak. The battle ended as the twin suns of the Rift system dipped below the horizon. Debris floated in silence. Surviving Varelian ships fled into the void. Rebel vessels helped rescue stranded crews, even enemy ones. Nara Vex met Owen on the Vanguard's bridge. They didn't shake hands. They just nodded. No words were needed. Back on Earth, the news spread fast. Not through broadcasts, but through quiet messages, coded texts, and hushed conversations. People didn't cheer. They stood a little taller. They looked at the stars and no longer saw only danger. They saw allies. Leah debriefed Voss in a secure cell beneath Geneva. He spat at her feet. "You think this changes anything?" He growled. "The Empire is eternal." Leah smiled faintly. "Not anymore," she said. Then she played him a recording, senators from a dozen worlds denouncing his actions, calling for his trial. Even his own people had turned. Marcus returned to his lab, exhausted but awake. He stared at the blue sphere of the disruptor, now quiet. He thought of Daniel, of Lisa, of the millions who had trusted their leaders to protect them. They had done more than that. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would not bow, not to fear, not to lies, not to death, and the galaxy was listening. Part 5. The war did not end with a bang, but with a whisper. After the defeat at the Helios Rift and the capture of General Krell Voss, the Galactic Empire began to unravel. Not all at once, but like a thread pulled from old cloth, slowly at first, then all at once. Rebellions flared on a dozen worlds. Senators who once bowed to the high command now demanded change. The truth about Daniel Cole's execution, leaked by Leah Foster and spread by the Dawn Circle, became impossible to deny. The Empire had not acted in justice, it had acted in fear. And fear, once exposed, loses its power. On Vareli's prime, the ruling council collapsed under the weight of its own lies. The Chancellor, once a figurehead for Voss's regime, was removed in a bloodless vote. In his place rose a new provisional government led by reformers, many of whom had secretly supported the Dawn Circle. Their first act was to send a peace delegation to Earth, not with warships, but with a single unarmed vessel flying a white banner. They asked for a meeting. Earth agreed, but on its terms. The signing took place on Luna Station, a neutral ground orbiting Earth's moon. The station had once been a research outpost. Now it was the birthplace of a new order. President Elena Ruiz arrived first, dressed in simple gray, her silver hair pulled back. She was not alone. Beside her stood Owen Pierce, still in his uniform, his eyes scanning the docking bay out of habit. Marcus Bell came next, quieter, his hands clean for once, and Leah Foster walked behind them, her gaze sharp, ready for tricks. They were not soldiers or spies anymore. They were witnesses. The Virelian delegation stepped off their ship led by a woman named Taylor Marn, a former judge who had once argued for Daniel's right to a fair trial. She carried no weapons. Her eyes held sorrow, not pride. She did not speak of victory or defeat. She spoke of mistakes. "We were wrong," she said simply, "and we will make it right." The treaty was signed in a sunlit chamber with Earth visible through the window. Blue, whole, alive. The terms were clear. The Empire would publicly try those responsible for Daniel's execution, including Voss and his inner circle. Full reparations would be paid to Earth for the blockade and attacks. Most importantly, humanity would gain equal standing in all galactic councils, with full voting rights and protection under interstellar law. No more second-class status. No more silence. After the signing, Taylor handed President Ruiz a small box. Inside was Daniel Cole's silver globe pin, the one that had fallen to the obsidian platform on the day he died. It had been kept in evidence all this time. Now it was returned. Ruiz held it gently, then placed it in the pocket over her heart. No words were needed. Back on Earth, people gathered in cities and towns, not to celebrate, but to remember. In Denver, Lisa Cole stood by the lake where she and Daniel used to skip stones as kids. She held a photo of him in his uniform, smiling like he always did. She did not cry. She smiled back. Justice had come. Not perfect, not complete, but real. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Dawn Circle became an official alliance of free systems, with Earth as a founding member. Naravex returned to Vireli's Prime not as a fugitive, but as an advisor to the new council. Rebel ships were rebranded as peacekeepers. Old trade routes reopened, now with human vessels sailing proudly among them. Marcus Bell returned to his lab, but not to build weapons. He turned his mind to something new: gravity stabilizers for civilian ships, safe warp corridors, even rescue beacons that could pull stranded travelers from black holes. "We spent so long learning how to break things," he told his team. "Now let's learn how to fix them." Owen Pierce took command of the newly formed Earth Alliance fleet. His first mission was not war, but patrol, guarding shipping lanes, helping lost ships, standing watch so others could sleep safely. He still checked every system twice. Old habits died hard. But now, when he looked at the stars, he saw not enemies, but neighbors. Leah Foster stayed in intelligence, but her work shifted. She helped build secure networks between worlds, trained diplomats in code breaking, and even taught alien students how to spot lies in data streams. She kept one habit, though, every night. She sent a short message to Lisa Cole. Just 2 words. "He's remembered." President Ruiz gave one final speech from the steps of the United Earth Hall. She did not speak of glory or power. She spoke of responsibility. "We did not ask for this war," she said, "but we answered it with courage, not cruelty. Now we must build a peace worth keeping." The crowd listened in silence. Then slowly they began to clap. Not loudly, but steadily, like a heartbeat. Years later, children would learn about Daniel Cole in school. Not just as a victim, but as a symbol. The man whose death taught humanity that dignity is worth defending. Statues were raised, not of soldiers, but of diplomats, engineers, and rebels who chose truth over fear. And out among the stars, Earth Alliance ships sailed with a new emblem on their hulls. A silver globe wrapped in olive branches with a single star above it. It was not a threat. It was a promise. The galaxy had once thought humans were weak because they offered peace first. Now they understood. True strength is not in how hard you can hit, but in why you choose to stand at all. Earth had stood, and in doing so it had given others the courage to stand with them. The war was over. The future had just begun.